There is a particular kind of knowledge that only comes from spending years inside a specialty. Not the textbook version of what damages kidneys, the clinical version. The pattern recognition that develops when you have sat across from thousands of patients, reviewed their diets, traced their decline, and eventually started asking a different question. Not what did they do wrong, what did they keep doing that looked right? Nephrologists who have practiced for decades describe a consistent pattern in the patients whose kidney function declines faster than their age and risk profile would suggest. These are not people eating fast food daily or ignoring their health. These are people making deliberate food choices, often choices they were specifically told were healthy, that happen to create a specific burden on kidney tissue that accumulates over years without producing a single symptom until the damage is significant enough to show on a test. The 7 foods on this list are not poisons in the conventional sense. They do not cause immediate harm. They do not produce obvious reactions. What they do is interact with the kidney's specific filtering mechanisms in ways that create chronic low-grade stress on the tissue responsible for keeping your blood clean. And because that stress is chronic, gradual, and painless, it continues for years, while the person consuming these foods believes they are taking care of themselves. A 2022 analysis published in the Journal of the American Society of Nephrology examined dietary patterns in adults over 55 with no formal kidney diagnosis and tracked their kidney function over 8 years. The researchers specifically looked at foods that appeared in health-conscious dietary patterns, but were associated with worse kidney outcomes. What they found was a cluster of foods that repeatedly appeared in the diets of adults with faster than expected kidney function decline. Foods that would pass any reasonable nutritional audit as healthy choices. The 7th food on this list surprises almost no one when they first hear it. The 3rd one surprises almost everyone. And the first, the one that nephrologists who understand the research have most consistently removed from their own daily routine, is something that millions of adults have been specifically encouraged to eat more of by the same healthcare system that has never connected it to kidney damage. Before we begin, tell us in the comments right now, how old are you and where are you watching from? And which of these 7 foods do you eat regularly? Drop it below. We read and respond to every single comment. Number 7. Processed deli meats, eaten as a daily protein source. Deli meats occupy a strange space in the modern diet. They are convenient, protein-dense, and present in the refrigerators of millions of households as a practical answer to the question of what to eat for lunch. For adults who are trying to maintain adequate protein intake, which becomes increasingly important after 60, they feel like a responsible choice. The kidney-specific problem with daily deli meat consumption involves 3 simultaneous burdens that individually would be manageable, but together create a consistent and compounding stress on kidney tissue. The first is sodium. Processed deli meats are among the highest sodium foods in the standard diet, with a single 2-ounce serving delivering between 400 and 700 milligrams of sodium, depending on the product. The kidneys regulate sodium balance through continuous tubular transport. When dietary sodium is chronically high, the tubular cells responsible for that transport are operating at maximum capacity continuously, a sustained high-activity state that accelerates their functional aging through oxidative stress. The second is inorganic phosphate preservatives. Virtually all processed deli meats contain phosphate additives used as preservatives and texture enhancers. Inorganic phosphate is absorbed at 90 to 100% efficiency compared to the 40 to 60% absorption rate of naturally occurring phosphorus in whole foods. This means a serving of processed deli meat delivers a phosphate load to the kidney roughly twice as large as the same amount of phosphorus from an unprocessed protein source, triggering the FGF23 hormonal cascade that forces the kidney into elevated phosphate clearance mode. The third is advanced glycation end products, or AGEs. Compounds form during the curing and processing of these meats that accumulate in kidney tissue and trigger oxidative stress in the glomeruli. Research from the Mount Sinai School of Medicine identified dietary AGE intake as a significant independent predictor of kidney function decline in older adults, operating through mechanisms separate from blood pressure, blood sugar, and protein intake. The practical substitution is fresh protein prepared at home, which eliminates all three of these burdens simultaneously. A piece of chicken breast or a portion of fish prepared without processed additives delivers the same protein with none of the sodium load, inorganic phosphate, or AGE burden that defines the processed version. Number 6. Spinach and high oxalate greens in large daily quantities. Spinach is one of the most consistently praised foods in modern nutritional culture. It appears in smoothies, salads, omelets, and pasta dishes across millions of health-conscious households. For most people, in reasonable amounts as part of a varied diet, it is genuinely nutritious and poses no specific kidney concern. The problem is not spinach in moderate quantities. The problem is the large, concentrated quantities that have become standard in contemporary health culture, particularly through green smoothies, where a single serving can contain the equivalent of 4 or 5 cups of raw spinach, and through daily consumption patterns where the same high oxalate greens appear at multiple meals. Oxalate is a naturally occurring compound found in high concentrations in spinach, Swiss chard, beet greens, and rhubarb. When dietary oxalate is high and consistent, the concentration in urine rises to levels where it begins to bind with calcium in the kidney tubules. These crystals are the most common component of kidney stones, but the relevant process for kidney health occurs before stones form. The formation and partial clearance of calcium oxalate microcrystals in the tubular environment produces chronic, low-grade inflammation in the tubular tissue. Over years of repeated cycles of crystal formation and inflammatory response, tubular scarring develops. Scarred tubules filter less efficiently. Kidney function measured by GFR begins a slow and largely invisible decline that is directly attributable to the oxalate burden rather than to any other identifiable cause. A 2020 study published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition examined adults who consumed more than 300 milligrams of oxalate daily, approximately the amount in 2 large green smoothies made with spinach. Compared to adults with low oxalate intake, this group showed a 34% faster rate of GFR decline over the follow-up period, with the highest risk pattern being daily large quantity spinach consumption in liquid form, which maximizes oxalate absorption relative to whole leaf consumption. Rotating high oxalate greens with low oxalate alternatives, including arugula, romaine lettuce, cabbage, and kale, addresses this without eliminating leafy greens from the diet. Ensuring adequate calcium intake at meals containing high oxalate foods reduces oxalate absorption in the intestine before it reaches the kidney, because calcium binds oxalate in the gut when the two are present simultaneously. Number 5. Canned soups and packaged broths used regularly. This one appears on almost no consumer-facing list of kidney-damaging foods, which is precisely why it continues to be a consistent presence in the diets of adults who are otherwise trying to eat carefully. Canned soups and packaged broths are convenient, warm, and associated in most people's minds with something gentle and nourishing. They are also among the highest sodium foods in the standard diet, with a single serving of most commercial soups delivering between 700 and 1,200 milligrams of sodium, sometimes more. For a person whose daily sodium target for kidney health is below 2,000 milligrams, a single bowl of commercial soup can consume more than half that budget in one sitting. Beyond the sodium load, most commercial soups and broths contain the same inorganic phosphate additives described in the deli meat section, added as flavor enhancers and preservatives. The combination of very high sodium and high inorganic phosphate in a single food item creates a compound kidney burden that is greater than either element would produce independently. The cumulative effect of regular commercial soup consumption on kidney function is difficult to separate from overall dietary sodium in research because the two tend to move together. What is consistently documented is that dietary sodium above 3,000 milligrams daily drives GFR decline at measurably faster rates than intake below 2,000 milligrams, and that commercial soups and broths are among the primary contributors to high sodium intake in adults who do not routinely eat fast food or heavily processed snacks. Making soup at home with low sodium broth or water and fresh ingredients eliminates the phosphate additive burden entirely and allows complete control over sodium content. The kidney processes homemade soup fundamentally differently than it processes the commercial version, because the chemical composition of what arrives at the tubular cells is genuinely different. Before we continue, if this has been useful so far, hit that like button so more people can find this information. Subscribe and turn on notifications. New content every week. Number 4. High-dose turmeric supplements taken daily. This one generates significant resistance, and the distinction being drawn here is genuinely important. Turmeric as a culinary spice, used in cooking in the quantities present in traditional South Asian and Middle Eastern cuisines, is not a kidney concern for most adults. The anti-inflammatory research on curcumin, the active compound in turmeric, is extensive and generally positive. The problem is supplemental turmeric and high-dose curcumin capsules, which have become enormously popular as anti-inflammatory interventions, and which deliver oxalate loads that are categorically different from what the spice itself provides in culinary quantities. Turmeric is exceptionally high in oxalate. 1 teaspoon of turmeric powder contains approximately 40 milligrams of oxalate. High-dose curcumin supplements, which are typically standardized to 95% curcuminoids, and often recommend doses of 1,000 to 2,000 milligrams of extract daily, can deliver the oxalate equivalent of several tablespoons of turmeric powder per dose. Adults taking these supplements daily in pursuit of anti-inflammatory benefits are unknowingly delivering some of the highest oxalate concentrations available in any supplement form directly to their kidney tubules. Case reports of turmeric supplement-induced acute oxalate nephropathy have appeared in nephrology literature with increasing frequency over the last several years. These are not cases of pre-existing kidney disease being worsened. These are cases where previously healthy adults developed acute kidney injury directly attributable to high-dose turmeric supplementation. The majority had been taking the supplement for months before the injury became clinically apparent. For adults taking high-dose curcumin supplements specifically for their anti-inflammatory effects, discussing with a doctor whether the kidney oxalate burden outweighs the intended benefit and whether lower oxalate anti-inflammatory alternatives such as omega-3 fatty acids or boswellia are more appropriate is a conversation worth having explicitly. Number 3. Avocado consumed daily in large quantities. This is the one that surprises almost everyone, and the clarification required here is important enough to state clearly at the outset. Avocado is a nutritionally valuable food. Its monounsaturated fat content, fiber, and micronutrient profile make it genuinely beneficial for cardiovascular health and metabolic function. For most adults, eating avocado regularly is a healthy choice. The kidney-specific concern is not with avocado as a food. It is with the potassium load that daily large quantity avocado consumption delivers, specifically in adults whose kidney function has already begun to decline without a formal diagnosis. A single medium avocado contains approximately 700 milligrams of potassium, which is more than 20% of the daily recommended intake in a single food item. Healthy kidneys regulate potassium with extraordinary precision, and in adults with full kidney function, dietary potassium from avocado is handled without difficulty. In adults with any degree of reduced kidney filtration capacity, which describes a significant portion of adults over 60, without any formal diagnosis given the silent nature of early kidney decline, The kidney's ability to excrete excess potassium is diminished. Elevated blood potassium, called hyperkalemia, affects heart rhythm in ways that can be dangerous. The kidneys in early decline are managing potassium less efficiently than their normal blood test results suggest, because the same compensation mechanism that keeps creatinine normal in early kidney disease also masks early potassium regulation impairment. Nephrologists who are aware of their own kidney function and who monitor their own laboratory values have described reducing daily avocado consumption as one of the dietary adjustments they make once their estimated GFR shows any downward trend. Not because avocado is harmful in healthy kidneys, but because the potassium load it delivers requires kidney excretory capacity that they prefer not to use unnecessarily. Number 2. Beetroot consumed daily in large quantities or as daily juice. Beetroot has become one of the most aggressively marketed performance and wellness foods of the last decade. Its nitrate content and documented effects on blood pressure and exercise performance are genuine and well-researched. The cardiovascular benefits of moderate beetroot consumption are real. The kidney-specific concern involves two separate mechanisms, both of which become relevant at the daily large quantity consumption levels promoted in many detox and cleanse protocols. The first is oxalate. A single medium beetroot contains 150 to 200 milligrams of oxalate. 2 medium beets consumed daily, which is a common recommendation in commercial juice cleanse programs, delivers oxalate at the upper threshold of what the research associates with elevated tubular crystal formation risk. The mechanism is identical to the one described in the spinach section, with the same consequences for tubular tissue over time. The second is betaine, a compound in beetroot that the liver metabolizes into trimethylamine N-oxide, or TMAO. TMAO must be filtered and excreted by the kidneys, and at the concentrations produced by daily large quantity beetroot consumption, it has been associated in research with oxidative stress and inflammatory changes in glomerular tissue. A 2022 paper in Clinical Kidney Journal examined adults participating in commercial juice cleanse programs that included daily large quantity beetroot juice. Markers of kidney tubular injury were significantly elevated after 14 days compared to baseline, with the effect most pronounced in adults over 55. Occasional beetroot in normal dietary quantities is not a kidney concern for most adults. Daily large quantity consumption as a health protocol, particularly in juice form, which removes the fiber that moderates absorption, deserves more caution than the wellness industry typically applies to it. Number 1. Excessive dietary protein from supplements and protein-forward diets. This is the food category that nephrologists describe most consistently as the single most modifiable driver of kidney function decline in adults over 60 who are actively trying to take care of their health. And it is the one that requires the most nuanced explanation because the underlying principle that adequate protein matters enormously after 60 is correct. The problem is not protein. It is excess protein consistently delivered beyond what the body can utilize for muscle synthesis and metabolic function. When protein is consumed in excess of what the body can use for its intended purposes, the excess is processed as fuel. This metabolism produces nitrogen-containing waste products, primarily urea and creatinine, that must be filtered and excreted by the kidneys. A chronically elevated protein load produces a chronically elevated waste clearance demand. The kidneys respond with sustained hyperfiltration, a state of elevated filtration rate that meets the immediate clearance demand but accelerates the mechanical aging of the glomerular membranes over time. A major study published in the American Journal of Kidney Diseases followed adults over 60 consuming various protein levels for 7 years. Those consuming above 1.5 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight daily showed significantly faster GFR decline compared to those consuming between 0.8 and 1.2 grams per kilogram. The effect was most pronounced in adults whose baseline kidney function was already modestly reduced, which, given the silent nature of early kidney decline, likely included a significant portion of the study population without their awareness. The protein-forward dietary culture of the last decade, which has encouraged adults over 60 to consume as much protein as possible through supplements, protein bars, protein shakes, and protein-first meal construction, has created a population of health-conscious adults consuming protein at levels that their kidneys are not equipped to handle efficiently without long-term cost. The research-supported target for adults over 60 without established kidney disease is 0.8 to 1.2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight daily, distributed across 3 meals rather than concentrated in 1 or 2. This range supports muscle preservation and metabolic function while keeping the kidney's waste clearance demand within the range it can handle efficiently across decades rather than years. A man came in having followed a high-protein diet for 4 years based on the advice he had received about muscle preservation after 60. His protein intake was consistently above 2 grams per kilogram daily. His muscle mass was excellent. His kidney function had declined by 18% over the 4-year period, with no other identifiable cause. He had been doing everything he was told to do. His kidneys had been paying for it quietly the entire time. After reducing his protein intake to 1.1 grams per kilogram and distributing it evenly across 3 meals, his rate of GFR decline slowed measurably within 6 months. Not reversed, slowed, which, given that kidney nephrons do not regenerate, was the most meaningful outcome available. 7 foods, each one present in diets that look responsible and health-conscious from the outside. Each one interacting with the kidney's specific filtering mechanisms in ways that create a chronic and accumulating burden that no single annual blood test is sensitive enough to detect until the damage has been building for years. You need to understand what each one costs in the context of how your kidney is actually functioning right now, not how your last blood test suggested it might be functioning. That distinction is the difference between a dietary adjustment that matters and one that comes too late. Now we want to hear from you. Which of these 7 foods surprised you most? Are any of them part of your daily routine right now? Share in the comments below. We respond to every single one. Subscribe if you haven't already. Next week, we are covering the one sleep position that nephrologists identify as the most protective for kidney function overnight, and the one that millions of adults use every night that is working against them.